I play Adriana Washington, and she loses her grandmother on this airplane crash. And so we are all grieving together, and she goes through the process of figuring out who she is after her grandmother is gone. And for her, that means running for Congress. Well, I actually lost my grandmother 5 years ago myself, so it felt like I knew exactly where to draw from, and grief isn't always so bad. There's actually a lot of love and a lot of light to be found on the other side of it, because healing requires that. And so even on set, we were filming really, really heavy material, but we were cracking jokes and reminiscing about our loved ones that have passed in the way that you would. So it was lighthearted at the same time. Dear Edward is about community. It's about coming together and finding family. Every single person in the story loses a loved one, and every single person gains a loved one at the end.
I became obsessed with the real plane crash that took place in 2010, a flight from South Africa bound to London, and it crashed in Libya, and there was only one survivor. It was a little 9-year-old Dutch boy, and the rest of the people on the plane died immediately, including his parents and his brother. And I was obsessed with that story, and I just thought, how can that little boy go on after losing everyone like that? How is he expected to leave the hospital without his mom and his dad and his brother? And I started writing the book really to figure out if he could be okay. Jason really took my book and then reimagined it. So the core of it is the same, and I would say the heartbeat of it is the same. There's still the kindness and the love and the need for connection. That heartbeat is the same, but there are different characters and new storylines, and he did an amazing job. My favorite part is the little boy who plays Edward, just because it feels like my insides on a TV screen, and this little boy that I spent 8 years with while I was writing the book, and sort of seeing him, and Colin O'Brien plays the role so beautifully that it's very moving to me. And Connie Britton is amazing.
I play John Curtis. He is a custodian at a state college, and he is married to Lacey, and so Edward is his nephew, and after the tragic plane crash, he comes to live with them, and he becomes something like a father figure, but more like a big brother for him. He's amazing. He's so incredible, so talented, and so sweet, and so smart. So it was a real joy to work with him. The first episode definitely has a very foreboding quality to it. And then after that, it's about dealing with the aftermath of that going forward, and the difficulty of being good to each other through that. It's a very sincere approach to dealing with loss and grief, and how you pick up after those things and just move forward with your life, go to work, make dinner, and that those things also have great gravity to them as well. And that's the beauty of what living your life is.
Dear Edward is a show about finding hope after loss, and how the different storylines and characters do it in different ways. Edward is kind of what ties all the storylines together, because he was the sole survivor of the plane crash that everyone else lost their family members in, or loved ones. But all the storylines are so important to the story, and they all tell something different. They all support a main message, which is that you can come back from any level of loss through hope and finding new connections and community.
I play Dee Dee, and she is a very happily married woman. Her husband has made a lot of money, and she really enjoys that, and she has a big life, and she's from New Jersey, and she's a little bit like a Real Housewife of New Jersey in the best possible way, and then she loses everything. Dee Dee had all kinds of security blankets in place so that she would not feel the pain. And ultimately, even those things were pulled away so that she had to face the pain and who she really was. And, ultimately she grew from it. It was funny when Jason called and told me this was the character he was imagining for me. I was so surprised. I was like, oh, that's so different from Tammy Taylor on Friday Night Lights. So, but I loved that. That was what made it really exciting. I really hope that audiences understand that while the ideas behind the show have a lot of sadness, there's a real cathartic emotional aspect to it that I think audiences will find really uplifting. We're going to see people from very diverse backgrounds connecting on this one common experience of grief and loss.
I play Steve. He's a gazillionaire in New York, and he loses his brother on the plane. I would say the main theme of Dear Edward would be something about human resilience and unity and perseverance. It's actually incredibly moving and funny and heartbreaking and joyful and all of the things in one.
This is a show about a 12-year-old boy who survives this plane crash, and which sounds like heavy and depressing, but it's actually the show that's about what happens afterwards to him and a group of unlikely group of people who meet and become very much connected. And it's a show that's really about hope and connection and sort of the power of the human spirit and resiliency. It's a dream ensemble. I love doing big ensemble shows. It's my favorite thing, and this is a big ensemble show, and so it's been great. I got to work with Connie Britton again, which I haven't worked with her since Friday Night Lights. It's been like a dream. We stepped right into our shorthand, and it was very collaborative and wonderful to work with Taylor Schilling, who I've been a huge fan of, who was sort of taking on this role that was kind of like a anchor role in the show, and did such a beautiful job. She just kind of like dived into it with abandon. Colin O'Brien came in and read for us among, I would say, hundreds of actors, and we found him to be have such a light, mature beyond his years. I have to remind myself sometimes that he's a kid.
In reading the story, I just felt like the characters that Anne created and the environment that she kind of established for us was something that Jason could take and run with.
Yes.
And to be honest, I mean, I read it pre-pandemic, but I think as we got into the making of the show, it became even clearer that the idea of, shared grief and the power of human connection was just something that we all could very much relate to. Hopefully not many of us have lost people in a plane crash, but most of us have lost in general. But I think this added layer of this shared grief that we've all been through the past few years certainly makes this very timely and something that people can relate to.
We meet Lacey, and she's in charge of a small child who survived this really traumatic plane crash, and she discovers over the course of this season an entirely new life and a new sense of self and a new sense of what it means to mother and what it means to be a friend and what it means to be a member of a community and kind of discover life again. It was such a beautiful ensemble and such it was such a deep group of actors. Everyone took this so seriously and was so excited to be there and really wanted to do justice to the story, and it was really just such a pleasure to play with all these people. Jason Katims has such an open heart, and he's such a generous collaborator. He was so available to talk about anything that was going on with me and in terms of the world of our show, and I think it's courageous how open his heart is. It's profoundly affirming to what we've all kind of experienced in the past couple of years. There's a lot of loss, but there's so much life that can be gained when we kind of come together, and that's really what this show is a microcosm of.